What's up YouTube, Capital G here, checking out the brand new Vendread cards coming out of Extreme Force, and I have to just say I am not very happy about this support. I'm very unenthused about where Vendread are going potentially. I don't think that these cards really improve the deck in any tangible way, not significantly anyways, and I know a lot of people think that maybe I'm too harsh on the TCG exclusive archetypes. I do have a tendency to kind of make quick, kind of snap judgments with the cards coming out of the gates, and I do understand that it is a lot more difficult to develop a TCG exclusive archetype because a lot of times they only get like 4 cards coming out of each set or coming out of their premiere set, and it's very difficult to make a successful archetype with just 3 or 4 cards. Cosmo and Burning Abyss were like the exceptions. They came right out the gate and like were topping YCSs and whatnot, and I will admit when I'm wrong or when Konami does a very good job of making kind of a bad archetype really good. I talked about the FA cards and I said these cards are so fucking good. I can't even believe that they're FA cards because the tuner is like broken and the synchro is incredibly good, but I've looked at these 4 cards and I just don't get it. It's like they're not even trying to improve the archetype. So let me go ahead and break them down. First up, we have Vendread Revolution. This is another trap card, which I just don't get because I don't think trap cards work that well in ritual archetypes. You can look historically, not trying to make every ritual deck, comparable to Necrons, because I know that there really won't be a comparison. But if you look at like BLS and all these other ritual archetypes that Konami tries to give traps to, they never play the fucking trap cards because ritual decks usually don't have the space to incorporate traps. If you give a ritual deck an Infernity Barrier, yeah, they'll play that because Infernity Barrier goes in basically every archetype ever, but outside of it being a barrier, ritual archetypes are not going to play trap cards, and that's just the way it is. So it says discard 1 card, then target 1 Vendread monster and ritual spell card in your graveyard. Special summon that monster in defense position, and if you do, add that ritual spell card to your hand. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 5 of your banished zombie monsters, shuffle them into your deck, then draw 1 card. Each effect is a hard once per turn. So, I mean, this is cute at best. I mean, it can summon one of your ritual Vendread monsters back from the graveyard, but it does require a cost. You're usually pitching cards in zombie decks isn't the biggest thing. Most zombie decks run stuff like Mizuki. I just don't really get, like, it summons the monster in defense position, so it's not gonna beat your opponent down like immediately. I mean, it can stop an attack possibly, but this just doesn't do anything. I mean, it summons one of the Vendread monsters, and the Vendread monsters themselves, like the ritual monsters, aren't really that impressive. The main deck effect monsters are all fucking terrible on the field, so I don't really see how this card like adds consistency to the deck or really changes any like powerful plays that it can do. So I would probably not run this. Next up, we have the level 1 monster. This is Vendread Core. It's dark, 0 attack, and it's a zombie monster, of course, 500 defense. It says if this card is in your graveyard, you can banish one other zombie monster from your graveyard. Special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. This is actually not that bad. I mean, you should have at least 1 or 2 disposable zombies in your graveyard, and worst case scenario, even if you can't ritual summon, you can turn this into a Link Karibo, which if you're going to run this, I imagine you're going to run Link Karibo, so at least you can block an attack at the cost of this guy being banished. Not bad, not bad. A Vendread monster ritual summon by using this card on the field gains the following effect. You can only use each of the preceding effects of Vendread Core once per turn. Your opponent cannot target this card with card effects. So it makes one of your Vendread ritual monsters untargetable with card effects. That's okay. The problem is the Vendread monsters themselves, the ritual monsters, they're not really strong enough to where not targeting them is going to be that big of a deal. Worst case scenario, your opponent can still kaiju them. They can still attack over them. Yes, I know that Vendread Origin can, stop destruction, battle destruction, or card destruction once. And honestly, this feels like a nice summoning. Like the way you summon it is cool, but it feels like Vendreads have other effect monsters that do more. Like they have one that lets you pop back row. They have one that lets you get at your opponent's like special summon monsters and get rid of those. So this feels like a nice idea, but it's just not really that powerful. Moving on, we have the quick play. This is Vendread Charge. This says send 1 zombie monster from your hand or face up on your field to the graveyard. Special summon 1 Vendread monster from your deck. You can only activate 1 Vendread Charge per turn. This card was so close to actually being good, and honestly, I think the card just sucks. Oh man, the problem with this is it does not summon, or you cannot summon ritual Vendread monsters. And the thing about Vendread monsters is the core monsters, like the effect ones, the one that I just talked about, Vendread core, Vendread revenants, and the Vendread hound, like they're not good monsters on the field. The only reason you'd ever want them on the field is to ritual summon with them to empower the ritual monsters, which themselves aren't really all that great to begin with. So like, am I really going to play a neg 1 just to switch one shitty Vendread monster into another shitty Vendread monster? Like, I don't think so. Maybe at best you can pitch a Mizuki in your hand to get another monster from your deck, but this is a hard once per turn. It's just not worth it, to be honest. If this would have been able to summon a ritual monster from your deck, oh my god, I would have been like, this is an automatic 3 of. It's amazing. It changes how the deck actually runs. So far, none of the cards have really been that good. We have a trap that doesn't really do much and requires a discard. We have a level 1 that is pretty good in theory, but I don't really know if it's going to do all that much, because this deck doesn't lose to like targeting effects. It loses because the cards are underpowered, and even when you get them on the board, they don't really do much. And then you have a shitty quick play that turns one shitty card into another shitty card. So far, the cards aren't that good. Then we have the dreaded Shockmaster everybody was excited about, Vendread Battle Lord, and this guy is a level 7. Which, I guess Konami R&D just has never played ritual decks, because we now have 3 Vendread ritual monsters and they're all different levels. And it's not like there's a Vendread Shuret in this deck. So, summoning 3 different monsters with 3 different levels is kind of a pain in the ass, Konami, but whatever. I guess you wanted this deck to suck. It's 2700 attack and 0 defense. I don't mind the 0 defense at all, because 2700 for a level 7 is perfectly fine. I'll take that. Now, this is the guy who is similar to Shockmaster, but he ain't no fucking Shockmaster, for anybody out there saying that. You can ritual summon this card with any Vendread ritual spell. You can banish 1 Vendread card from your graveyard. Okay, declare 1 card type, monster, spell, or trap. For the rest of the turn, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects of that type. If this ritual card is, if this ritual summon card is sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 ritual monster from your deck to your hand. And if you do, send one Vendread monster from your deck to the graveyard. I believe that that's built into Slayer. In fact, I think that is his exact effect verbatim. Look, this card was incredibly close, just like the last one. Just like Vendread Charge, Battle Lord was incredibly close to being broken, but the problem with this card is simple. It does not last until the end of your opponent's turn, so it's really not Shockmaster. And even if they weren't going to make it last into your opponent's turn, Konami could have easily made this card a lot better. All they had to do was make it a quick effect. If this card would have been a quick effect, then you could just wait for your opponent's turn and then just call spell cards against, maybe something like Prophecy or against like Pendulum decks, or you could just like call monster effects, call traps against like Payload. That would have been amazing. There were so many ways that they could have made this card significantly better, and I don't understand. Some people are going to say, well, Cap G, you can OTK your opponent by calling traps. Okay, when's the last time you ever saw a fucking Vendread deck OTK anybody? Because I've never seen that. This is coming from a guy who live streams Yu-Gi-Oh! 8 hours a day, twice a week. I have never seen someone get OTK'd by Vendreads unless they were playing a deck that was maybe Ice Barriers or something like that. So this deck isn't good enough to OTK anybody. Like, this card is not going to be as impactful as people think. It's not really a Shockmaster. It's a watered down wannabe Shockmaster, and it's a real shame, because Konami had 2 cards here that could have been absolute home runs, that could have honestly been so far ahead of the game. It maybe could have changed how people look at this archetype. No, not how people look at this archetype, how good the archetype actually was. They had an opportunity to do the thing that they just did with FAs, where they made that tuner monster, the new one, that's like broken, and they made a bunch of good cards. If they would have made, Battle Lord have a quick effect, he would have been a legitimate stun card, and you wouldn't have actually had to worry about even running strikes and defensive cards, because you could have just locked your opponent out of monster effects and they wouldn't have been able to play any Yu-Gi-Oh! And you'd have been fine. If they would have made, the charge actually summon ritual monsters from the deck, then you would have been able to get the ritual monster on field incredibly easy, because he would have been a win condition. But I don't know. This is frustrating. Usually the 3rd set for a TCG exclusive archetype is kind of the make or break set. Don't get me wrong, at least the artwork on the archetype is cool, but the fourth set, Flames of Destruction, the cards from that set would have to be so unbelievably broken to save this archetype that I just don't think that that's realistic. Or maybe Konami and the OCG is going to give them, you know, some like ridiculous broken card that we don't see coming, but I don't think any of these cards actually like help the archetype all that much. I think that Battle Lord was close to being really powerful, and he's really kind of easy to kill, and he doesn't offer any protection. When he dies, okay, he gets a, you know, Vendread monster, that's cute, but this archetype is not good enough to compete, not even with things like crawlers or some of the other archetypes that are from the Vrains era, not named Trickstars. And again, I don't hate this archetype. I really believe that this was the make or break set for the archetype, and these cards don't do it in my opinion. So whatever you guys think, leave it in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already. Turn on that notification bell for daily videos.